Hello, this is Mario from photools.com. In this video I'm going to show you how to use the Navigator in IMatch WebViewer. The Navigator is a central component of IMatch WebViewer. It is used for selecting files for searching and filtering. It controls what is shown in the file window. It offers multiple ways to select files. You can select files using folders, categories, collections, metadata, timeline, rating, label, and even a full text search. Once you have made a selection, you can rerun it later using the Stored Filters panel. This makes it very easy to store selections and retrieve them later at any time. Okay, now let's have a look at the Navigator. The Navigator is divided into several panels. Each panel deals with one aspect of your database. For example, the Folders panel deals with folders, the Categories panel allows you to work with categories, and the Rating and Label panel allows you to work with ratings and labels. Let's look at this panel first. When I click on one of the label buttons, IMatch WebViewer retrieves all files with this label from the database and shows them in the file window. Since we are using a pretty small database, we have only 11 files in this case, but this also works if you have 300 files or 3000 files. I can also just unclick this one and click another label and I see all the files with that label. Or I combine them to see them together. When I combine a label selection with a rating selection, for example, I click on the star representing ratings 4, I see a combination of all files which have a purple label and a rating of 4 stars or 5 stars. With these two buttons, I can control how the rating selection and the label selection are combined. In this case, the option is set to AND, which means that I see all files which have this selected label and the selected rating, which means I see all files with a purple label and a rating of 4 or 5. When I switch this to OR, I see all files in the database which have either a purple label or a rating of 4 or 5, or both. If you're a bit confused about all the label colors, these are the colors you have assigned in IMatch to the label texts used by your software. You can use this button to show the actual label name, if this makes it easier for you. As with all panels, you can reset the selection by clicking on this X button. To see all files without a rating, you can use this button. To see all files which have been rejected, which is marked for deletion, you can click this button. To see all files in a database without a label, you can click this button. And this pretty much votes up the functionality of the rating and label panel. You may have noticed that the file window has stopped loading files and instead displays this message. This is a protection feature. If you accidentally select too many files, like in this case 6100 files, the file window jumps into the auto pause mode, which means it stops loading files and just displays how many files it's going to load when you click on this button. Loading 6000 files, or at least the data of 6000 files over a slow network or a mobile connection, can take a long time. And this is the reason why the file window has this auto pause feature to protect you. If you really want to see the files, all 6000, you click on this button and IMatch WebViewer will load them. Now let's have a look at the search panel. The search panel enables you to search the database for file names, metadata, or IMatch attributes containing a specific word or a combination of words. For example, I have selected the search option file name and I now enter one of my numeric file names to find all files containing this very search term in the file name. I could also search for ENG, for example, which finds all images containing the word ENG or England or something similar in the file name. To clear the search, just click on the X button. When I want to search in metadata, for example for food, IMatch Anywhere searches the database for all files containing metadata with the term food. It searches frequently used tags like title, description, hierarchical keywords and similar frequently used metadata tags. I can use simple search words like this one or that one, or I combine multiple search words using the AND or the OR operator. For example, model and hair, to find all files in a database which contains both the word model and the word hair. The same works for food and ice, to limit the selection to all files in the database which have the words food and the word ice in the metadata. This panel makes it very easy to search your database for specific files very quickly. For very complex search cases with very specific requirements, you can switch on the search using regular expression mode, which allows you to use regular expressions as your search term. Please see the help file for more information. You can also revert the search result, which means that you find all files not containing the search word. For example, I search for food, which gives me 23 files, and when I click on this option, I get all files which have not food as a keyword or as a description or as a title. Off, all files containing the word food. On, all files which do not contain the word food. The Categories panel enables you to select IMatch categories and to see the files assigned to these categories. For example, I click on the Miller category and I see all files assigned to the Miller category. I click on the Susanna category in addition and I see the files combined from both categories, because the selection mode is set to OR, which means I see all files contained in at least one of the selected categories. If I switch this to AND, I see only files contained in all selected categories, which gives you some additional options to select specific files. To reset the selection, as usual, click on the X button. To find a specific category, just type its name and then click on the result to see the files in that category. The Folders panel allows you to work with the physical folders contained in your database. That's very similar to the Media and Folders view you know from IMatch. To see the contents of a folder, you click on the checkbox in front of the folder name. In this case, I see all files in the folder basket, and I can combine this with another folder, say ice cubes, and I see all the files in these both folders combined. Maybe just add another folder, Japanese, for some juicy Japanese food. Very nice. To reset the selection, click on the X. To find a folder with a specific name, type its name and then click on the result to see the files in that folder. The Collection panel allows you to work with IMatch collections very similar to how we work with IMatch collections in the IMatch collection view. For example, to see all files which have been bookmarked, just click on Bookmarks. To see all files, with red dot, for example, I click on the red dot. Or I combine this with all files with the blue dot to see them both. You can use the collection panel to see quickly all files which have been bookmarked, all files which have been protected, which are branding for write back, or files which have been dotted or pinned. You can also use the dedicated label or rating collections to see all files with specific ratings or labels. For example, I want to see all files with the label approved. And what I can do now is I can combine this with another selection, for example in the rating and label panel. If I click on the label rating of 5, I combine the selection in the collection panel, which gives me all approved files, with all files that have a rating of 5. Off, combine. This works across all panels. If I remove the selection from the collections panel to clear the result, and then I search for files with the keyword Lara, for example, I can combine the result of the search panel with the rating and label panel, for example to see all files containing the term Lara, which also have a yellow label. I click this one. To see only files with a purple label and a rating of 5, I combine them this way. This combination of individual panel results works across the board. You can always combine multiple panels in the Navigator to get exactly the selection you want. This is indeed a very powerful instrument to find exactly the files you are looking for, even in the largest databases. You can now clear each selection separately, or you use the special X button in the stored settings panel caption to clear all selections at once. With the timeline, you can select files based on their creation date. For example, to see all files created in the year 2015, I just click on the corresponding node in the timeline. Or to be more specific, I can pick files based on a specific month or a day, like the 7th of July in 2015. Let's have a look at the Metadata Panel, which is the most powerful panel in the Navigator. For this example, I have selected the file format preset to see a list of all file formats used in my database. To see all files for a specific format, I just select the format in this list. Using the Ctrl or Shift keys, I can select multiple file formats as well. When I click on the JPEG entry, I see all 6101 JPEG files in my database, and the file window automatically triggers the auto pause to avoid loading all these files, unless really needed. To bring this down a bit, I can combine another panel, say the rating and label panel, with this selection, and to see all JPEG files in my database with the rating of 5, I just use both panels, which gives me all files in the database with the rating of 5 in the JPEG format. As you can see, the file format panel has adopted and now shows only one file format, because all other file formats have been weeded out by combining the selection. I can reset this one, and I can reset this one, and I get all file formats again to choose from. This may be a bit confusing at first, but in fact it's quite simple. The metadata panel works with the current selection in the file window. If there is no selection, it works with all files in the database. If I select all files with a rating of 5, the Metadata Panel adapts and shows only the file formats used for these files I'm currently seeing in the file window. These are JPEG, MP3 and PSD. I can now further limit the selection to all PSD files by clicking on the corresponding file format entry. I can reset it to get all files back. And when I click on the yellow label in addition, I can see that both files remaining of the file format PSD and the file format in the Metadata Panel has adapted accordingly. To explain it differently, the Metadata Panel only sees the files which are not filtered out by the selection I've made in the rating and label panel. In this case, only these two files remain, and both have the file format PSD, so I see only PSD files. Removing the yellow label gives me these files, all files with a rating of 5, and for these files, these 3 file formats have been used. Removing that restriction as well gives me all files in the database again, and I can see all file formats used in the Metadata Panel. Let's look at some of the other options available in the Metadata Panel. I can switch to the Photo Info preset, which groups images in the database based on camera data, like camera model, the lens used, ISO speed, shutter speed. To see all files taken with a specific camera, I click on the camera in the list. This shows me all files taken with that camera and also the lenses used and the ISO speeds used. To see all images taken with this camera at ISO 200, I combine selections in both lists. Again, all files from that camera and no selection at all. I can also click on a specific lens, or I can select files based on the shutter speed. Another very useful preset is the location preset. This automatically groups the images in your database based on GPS data. To see all files taken in the United Kingdom, I click on this entry. To further limit that to all files taken in London, I click on this entry. And I can further break this down to all images taken in a specific street by selecting the available streets in this list. The keyword preset is special because it shows some kind of index. This is because that many IMatch databases contain thousands of keywords, and displaying them all in a long list would be useless. So IMatch WebViewer groups keywords based on their first letter into this index. To select files with specific keywords, you click on the index entry representing the first letter of the keyword. For example, W, and then I click on the keyword wedding to see all files tagged with the keyword wedding. The keyword wedding also shows up in the list at the bottom, which becomes more clear if I switch to another keyword, say the A keywords, and then I click on the keyword Anna to see all files with the keyword wedding and the keyword Anna in combination. Currently, the selection mode is set to OR, which means I see all keywords, all files with the keyword Anna or the keyword wedding, or both. If I switch this to AND, I now see only files tagged with the keyword wedding and the keyword Anna. I can now remove individual keywords to get all wedding photos again. Selecting Anna again means all files with the keywords wedding and Anna. If I click on another keyword in this list, say age group child, I get no results because there are no files which have the tags wedding and the age group child keyword. I can now remove the wedding keyword to see all files with the keyword age group child. I can also use the search bar to quickly find files by keyword. For example, I'll make a selection for model. And I only want white backdrops. This quickly gives me all models and white backdrops. For this example, I have switched to a file window layout which displays the keywords instead of the images only or the image and the file name. I could also switch to larger thumbnails to see larger files and to arrange the keywords more efficiently. If I think that I'm going to use this selection again in the future, I can save it under a name in the Stored Settings panel. This allows me to load the selection later at any time by just clicking on the link. And here it is again. Storing selections in the Stored Settings panel can be a big time saver. For example, if I want to see the best files of 2015, I select 2015 in the timeline and then restrict this to all files with a rating of 4 or 5. If I now store this under a name, I can retrieve this selection later at any time by just clicking on the link. Or the models on white backdrop. Or best of 2015. Since this is now the active selection in the Navigator, I can add further restrictions, for example, restricting to all files with a yellow label or a purple label. Or load the original selection again. I could also restrict the contents of the file window by some other criteria, for example using metadata. Currently I see 16 files in the file window, and to see all files in the PSD file format, I use the file format filter. I could also filter the files by location. For example, I now see that some files have been taken in Frankfurt, and to see only these files, I use the location preset in the Metadata Panel. This pretty much covers the basic functionality of the Navigator. For details about each panel, please use the built-in help system in IMatch WebViewer.